I pledged during my leadership campaign last year that I would deal with the issue of Iraq. I would deal with it when the Chilcot report came out, and I would issue a full apology for the Labour Party's involvement in the invasion of Iraq, and I did it. What's sad is that what happened in Iraq was so eminently predictable. I'm no great soothsayer. It's not very surprising. You end up with the chaos and the loss of life in Iraq, and so I just find it very sad and very depressing. We've then had the spin-off of all the other problems in the region, so I take no comfort from that, but that is what many of us thought would happen. So we then go on to the reckoning. Well, we've had a number of inquiries in Iraq. Now, Chilcot is actually, it's a very clever piece of very English writing. It is very interesting the way it's presented, because at one level it's a great deal of understatement and lots of caveats all over the place, but it becomes absolutely clear as you go through it that the issue of the legality was open to a huge amount of debate and not properly presented to Parliament, and the culpability in the information that was given to Parliament of individuals has to be taken into account. Now, Chilcot kind of leaves it open. Then you add into that the ICC's proposals, and the words I said during the apology was, those that were responsible for the war in Iraq must be prepared to face up to their responsibilities. I met the families of the soldiers who died, and when you meet a family of anyone who's died, it's very hard. I meet the families of young people who've been stabbed to death. It's very hard for them to understand their son's life has gone through a random act of violence. If you join the army, in a sense, you join knowing there are risks involved, obviously. And then you die in a war like Iraq. And then it becomes apparent that the war was based on misinformation or deception, that it wasn't a necessary war, that it wasn't a defensive war, and your son or daughter has died in that particular conflict. It's very hard for those families to come to terms with that. So I spent a lot of time over the past years talking to families of those that have died. They're very, very impressive people. I think the way Reg Keyes and Peter Braley have conducted themselves is very, very impressive. They're not the only ones, there are others as well. And I just think that politicians who accept the idea that you'll vote in Parliament and cheer when you do it to go and bomb somewhere and for somebody else's children to die should think very, very carefully about that. We as a country have got to think very carefully about this, and the absolute minimum coming out of this has to be a War Powers Act, so that Parliament has to be consulted, there has to be a vote, and every MP then has to take responsibility.